So these are 5 don'ts in a relationship, 5 things you should stop doing. And these are things which I see quite frequently in the practice when people come in and they talk about relationship difficulties with their husband, their wife, or their boyfriend and girlfriend. So number 1 is you don't avoid conflicts, and arguments and disagreements are just a part of life. They're completely unavoidable. And I know some people spend their entire lives avoiding any kind of conflict because they can't deal with the high levels of stress and emotion that comes with it. And I was probably one of those people as well. And a lot of that comes down to their relationship with conflict and their associations with it, especially if they saw a lot of rows growing up, and then subsequent to the agreements there was separation or loss, and they may associate conflict with abandonment. In other cases, again, they revert back to a child state and they just start pointing the finger at their partner in terms of blame or judgment or criticism. And everything is an attempt to either avoid the conflict and avoid the real issue why you're rowing in the first place. And again, it has to change. And conflict is an important part of life, and it's all about expressing and resolving our differences. And it will bring a couple closer if they can be open and honest and actually really engage. We're fighting now, and this is why we're fighting. And it's also particularly important if you have kids, because kids do need to learn resilience. They need to have some exposure to conflict, and I'm not talking about ridiculous levels, but they need to know that conflict is a part of life, and they need to know how to resolve it through communication and through listening to each other. And also help them to expose themselves to some extent to the stress that comes with it, because through those experiences they will learn to cope with conflict and start to build up resilience inside themselves. So don't avoid conflict, accept it and embrace it as part of a life. Number 2, don't involve your parents in any kind of relationship difficulty. And I see this a lot where one or both partners, they revert back to their parents and they kind of confide in their parents. And really, you're adults at this stage. You should be able to deal with this yourself. If you can't, then go off and talk to someone who's a professional in it, someone who is impartial and who's not enmeshed in this situation. I find people who involve their parents, they regret it later on, because their parents then, they may be overly protective, or they just want to know that everything's okay, so they keep bringing it up, and it could be months after the row, and they just keep bringing it up, and at this stage the row is over and people just want to move on and forget about it. But unfortunately the parents can't do that, maybe because their own life isn't exciting enough and they want to involve themselves in their children's relationship, which happens quite a bit. So I mean, it's important to not stay in adult mode. Don't revert into a child state and run back to your parents looking for help. You need to stay as an adult. You need to engage with your partner, and your parents really should have no right in knowing what's going on in your private affairs with your relationship, and that's just it. Number 3, don't confuse criticizing with educating. And I find, again, in relationships, some people adopt a parental role in this case, where they become excessively critical, and they think that they're doing a service to their partner. They think that they're informing them and educating them and guiding them, and in reality they're just frustrating them. And I find criticism, especially excessive criticism, it just shuts communication down. They don't listen, they're not interested in what you have to say. And this is all about communication style and understanding each other, and also understanding that everybody learns differently and how they interpret information is different. And let's say the difficulty is over something quite menial around the home, but if someone was brought up in their home where their parents did everything, or their mother did all the housework, or the father did all the housework, then they may never didn't learn how to actually do these things. And these things may come across like they're quite simple and basic, but if you don't know, you don't know. So a lot of I try and encourage my clients to have more patience with their partner, and you've shown them how to do something 5 or 6 times and they're not getting it, well then you need to just persevere and understand that they, even though they're adults and they should probably know this, they don't know this, and there's no point in judging them or criticizing them. It's having more patience, but also maybe presenting a task. If you need them to do X, Y and Z, instead of just criticizing for not doing it, explore why they didn't do it. And I find writing lists, again, it might seem like very basic, and I often my clients think they feel like they're treating a child even though it's an adult, but a list may help a clarity in the person's head, and they can actually say, okay, this is what I need to do today, and it might help them to focus and actually do what needs to be done. So it's avoiding criticism altogether, because you're not educating them, you're not helping them. Educating them is having patience and trying to understand how they learn and the best way to express that to them and to communicate with them. Number 4 is don't ignore the small exchanges. And I find people hone in on the big rows, the times when things just blow up and there's bad language and we're shouting at each other. And that didn't come out of nowhere. I guarantee you there's a lot of little nips and tucks and exchanges and remarks that have led to that point. So really this is all about context and looking at the bigger picture of relationship and trying to explore where your triggers are. Again, the type of events that happen, the type of situations, the communication style, the look, the use of language, how they spoke to you, the tone of voice, and then you come together and you start talk about it and really try and find out what you could have done differently. And I think that's the biggest problem. It's not about having rows, it's about what happens after the row. You have to be able to talk about it, and you have to be able to see your involvement and their involvement. And in any row between two people, they both have their own point of view, but the truth tends to be in the middle. It's that some point in the middle where both parties are involved, and it's important to be able to say, look, yeah, I can see my part in this, and I'm sorry for what I did, but this is what you did. And then together you can meet each other in the middle. And really, relationships are work, and they're meant to be work, and it's work that carries forward all the way through your entire life, and it's teamwork. And I know I'll come across couples and relationships, and I know they're not doing the work when they don't know that much about each other, and they could be together years, and yet they don't really fully know what some of their life is like, their upbringing was like, the type of trials and struggles that they faced in their life, the past relationships, problems in work, past friendships. All of these things, these are parts of the bigger picture of a relationship and really forming intimacy with your partner, because you really need to know them. Now, you'll never know everything about everybody, and that's just a part of life. That's reality. But you should know a lot more than most people do, or the people that I cross paths with. So acknowledge that relationships are work and embrace that work. But again, look at the bigger picture and don't ignore those small exchanges. And the last one, the 5th one, is do not underestimate saying thank you. And thank you is so important. It's important to express gratitude, but also showing that you value what your partner is doing for you. And I meet so many people who just take people for granted, and they take the role that a person has adopted for granted. And if someone who comes in, all of a sudden they become the person that's cooking or cleaning all the time, that's not okay. It should be 50-50. But if one person is doing that work, at least say thank you for the dinners, for the small things, and it goes a long way. And again, it's reinforcing a positive behavior, and it will bring people closer together. So that's it, guys. Thanks a minute for watching. I've just started taking clients on for Skype. I will put a link probably somewhere on that side of the video. Check the website out, shoot me an email if you're interested, and that's it. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.